Remember when I reviewed Chowder's girlfriend 4 years ago where I described Panini's character? Well, she's a hypocrite for invading Chowder's space while Chowder invades her space, she criticizes him. I really feel like that this is a definition on how she is really attempting to invade Chowder's space, all because she really wants to be a mother, while Chowder, despite being mostly into babies in some other way, he is not father material, especially since he doesn't want to be Panini's husband. The plot of The Bruised Bluenana is while Chowder and Panini are taking care of the baby, which is a Bluenana. Well, in this show's universe, bananas as Bluenanas are people that people need to take care of. But most of the time, Chowder is mostly doing the work even though he doesn't want to, but Panini desperately wants to be the mother. This episode showcases Panini at her worst, to the point that what she said in Chowder's girlfriend towards the end doesn't mean anything while she's being a massive hypocrite by going after Chowder, which, with the Bluenana situation, well, Chowder needs to take care of the Bluenana, obviously, it really makes me to believe that if Chowder was taking control of the situation, which he is unable to throughout the majority of the episode, Panini would do something that, in this show's logic, any woman would do, and that's crying. And this is the biggest issue that I have that is similar to the My Life as a Teenage Robots episodes that I talked about early on in this schedule. Even though in some occasions, well, this show showcases Truffles on being in the white, mainly Mundar forgetting the anniversary he had with Truffles, I can't say the same thing when it comes to Panini because, truthfully, she is getting her way too much in comparison to Jenny. And while it does make sense in the season 2 episode, well, Jenny is going to the Sadie Hawkins dance, in comparison to season 3, well, she is taking control of the situation, but she's making a joke out of herself. Panini in this being a joke is a lot more worse because regardless if Sheldon is really attempting his future with Jenny, which is unlikely, Panini takes it to a level that is way over the top to the point that Chowder is so defenseless that he can't be able to have the upper hand. Even though that he mostly caused the Bluenana to get bruised, truthfully, the more I look at it, despite what I said earlier about him being into babies, what I said about him not qualified on being a father, I do mean that because if there are some episodes where Chowder is taking care of someone who is longer than him and he does much more better than what he does in this episode, he's not really the type of person who can be a father for the future of this show when it came to the finale. And while him growing up is important, him growing up to be a father is basically the last things he wants to grow up as. Every time I look at Chowder in this episode, it really sums up a lot that he is the type of person that even if he takes care of babies the right way that isn't like Bluenana's, then I'm pretty sure that the advices he would have taken from Mundar would have been much more better. And considering that the advices that he gets from Gizpacho aren't really good because he's not an expert on women, and the fact that he took bad advices because there was no one who was willing to help him out of this situation, I really feel bad for him. Truthfully, when I watched this episode back in 2008, I was rooting for these two to be together, but now It really shows how deranged Panini is. When she saw how bruised the Bluenana is, she takes in charge to be with Chowder no matter what. I would question onto how the Bluenana was healed after all this, but I'm just gonna be thinking Panini found a different Bluenana and she uses that Bluenana as the same Bluenana that Chowder was taking care of. This showcases the mentality of Chowder treating women of any kind in the white. Now, the truffles thing I understand, but when it comes to Panini, she is taking full control without giving Chowder's consent whatsoever. And since this leads to Chowder being extremely defenseless in the predicament that he's in, this show doesn't really convince me that women should be respected. If anything, it really shows the toxicity involving every single woman in this entire show, minus Truffles, but there are some episodes where I don't like her, but the anniversary episodes involving her and Mondor make sense. If you ask me, every time I look at Chowder in this episode, he desperately doesn't want to be a father, despite the fact that he wants to take care of the Bluenanas on his own, even though that he wasn't attempting to do so, considering that Panini pulled him into that situation. This episode really gave me a bad expression on being a father, even though I don't want to be a father, and seeing Panini as a toxic mother really makes me feel like if we were going to do the deed, if you know what I mean, and you have someone like Panini be that type of person, you would rather pick someone else who isn't too hardcore or toxic when it comes to being a mother. That's how much I can't be able to stand Panini in this, and the fact that she is doing this for the sake of kissing Chowder on the lips. Honestly, Chowder's reaction is incredibly justified and relatable when you side with him more than his relationship with Panini if you watch this show during my age back in 2007 through 2010. There is one joke that still holds up to this day. Well, after Chowder escapes from Panini to the point that he told Gazpacho about everything that happened, mainly recapping the episode to the point that Gazpacho broke the fourth wall by fast-forwarding this episode to where it leads to the credits, which is really humorous when it came to his reaction. But at the same time, this fourth wall break doesn't save the entire episode. I'm sorry, but this joke is better off if you watch it out of context and not watch the entire episode, judging of how terribly executed everything is. Just because Chowder is popular when it comes to fourth wall breaks doesn't mean that it's saving the entire episode. Because what ends up happening after that makes the episode a lot worse. I may have neglected the jokes that they did throughout this episode when it comes to Snitchel stopping Chowder and Panini doing something that they can't stop. But if you really think of what happens the end of this episode really showcases on those jokes not saving the episode with or without the fourth wall break. Truthfully, when Gazpacho is dressed up as a Bluenana in order to save Chowder from this toxic relationship, or mother or father relationship, husband and wife, Panini figures this out that Gazpacho is in the disguise, and she beats him up. The fact that every single male character is portrayed as defenseless compared to women on this show really makes me feel like that there's more of a reason onto why I can't be able to see women win in an argument or situation like this for how they're portrayed. To the point that nothing is killing them if they're in the wrong. As in, they lose to something compared to the men. because every single male character in this episode, mainly Chowder and Gazpacho, doesn't deserve any of this. But I will say that the only female character throughout this entire episode that is betrayed in a positive life is the Bluenana's mother. The fact that she critiques Panini and sadly Chowder despite what he did is satisfying, considering that it showcases that Panini was definitely in the wrong of putting any situation that she caused towards others into misery for her own benefit, to the point that this mother alone wouldn't even do that. Granted, we don't get to see her after this episode, but truthfully, aside from her scolding Chowder, which, despite what he did, he doesn't deserve it as much as Panini, is the only female character that I root for. Well, she only appears less than 30 seconds. Granted, back then I do feel bad for Panini, but now I don't. But the fact that she doesn't learn anything for what she caused, while putting Chowder through everything throughout the majority of this episode, she still ends up winning at the end by guilt-tripping Chowder by giving her a hug. Honestly, I don't understand why the creators of this show thought it was a good idea to have these two characters be together towards the end of this show, when they didn't even bother giving Panini more of a reason to sympathize with her after watching this episode, because this episode is by far Panini's worst episode. This episode is way worse than the My Life as a Teenage Robots episodes that I've talked about early on in the schedule, mainly the fact that it portrays Panini in a more terrible light in comparison to Jenny. And while I did discuss Shelton's character more in those episodes, the way I look at Panini in this, it's really difficult to consider if Chowder is worth capable of being a father if he actually found someone else that he would prefer rather than Panini. And truthfully, with this show being mostly comedic and mostly the heart of making this show as comedic, it really sacrifices Panini's character a lot more if someone was taking her character seriously. And I actually side with sarcastic chaos on criticizing her character and not criticizing Chowder's character, because truthfully, I can see how Chowder's portrayed, and this is also one of the rare shippings that I can understand him considered as a double standard. If this show ever got a revival, they seriously need to improve on Panini's character, because she's the only thing that ages this show really badly. Granted, everything else is good, but at the same time, we all know that this show is not 100% perfect. You can say it's one of the best comedies of Cartoon Network, but at the same time, you can't be able to admit that Panini is considered the best character when her obsession with Chowder decreases any value that she has, because this episode really has a huge decrease of any positivity that she has. Which is why I'm giving the Bruised Bluenana a 2 out of 10.